So Utah and Arizona share a lot of challenges in the environment, in the energy, and economic development. So it's a privilege for me to come down to this meeting and participate, and I hope find some ideas that I can steal and take back more. Universities generate a lot of the interesting new ideas that occur in society, but they are generally a very early stage of development and with a low probability of success. So the challenge for technology transfer, or technology commercialization as we prefer to call it now, is that in the past, universities have patented most of the disclosures that are made by professors. Most of the patents are never licensed. Only 3%, in our experience with nearly 6,000 disclosures over the last 40 years, fewer than 33% of the licenses that we've done ever generate revenue. And of the $15 million a year in licensing and royalty revenue that we have now, 0.1% of our licenses generate greater than 90% of the income. And that is typical for universities because the ideas are at a very early stage and require a lot of help to ever meet commercialization. And many of them don't have the potential to be commercialized, obviously, given these numbers. So is there a better way to do this? We spend a lot of money filing patents on ideas that are never licensed. We spend over $3 million a year on patent costs for our disclosures. We're trying to find a way to do this better, and that's what I want to talk about today. So last year, we reorganized our tech venture and commercialization operation to bring many more sets of eyes and brains to look at technologies that come out of our research laboratories. And our job in the tech commercialization area is to take technologies, evaluate their commercial potential, determine if they can become protected intellectual property, and eventually try to license them out on commercially reasonable terms. So I'm going to tell you about how we reorganized our tech commercialization operation, and I'm going to tell you that using an example of a technology that we got involved with, and that we had a local investment group called Clark Capital Partners involved with this new technology and a new process that we call the engine. So I'll just describe both the general case and then a specific example. So the basic idea of the engine is to get many more technical experts, business and finance people involved in evaluating our technologies. So we now have well over 100 people coming in from the community, regularly evaluating the technologies that are coming out of our labs. That gives us a chance to take advantage of the specific discipline knowledge that these folks have, and it also gets our technologies in front of people who may be interested in licensing them, starting companies, or becoming involved in the management of startup companies. So the technology is an antimicrobial chemical that the inventors believe will be much safer for use than currently available chemicals and cheaper for the prevention of biofilms and bacterial fouling in petroleum extraction and lubrication indications. So let's see how this works. So we call this engine, we say that it has three components. It has a two-stroke component, a four-cylinder component, and a V8 component. So blocks of marble, the basic invention disclosures come in, and in the two-stroke process, we try to figure out what this idea is. We work with the inventors so that our guys in tech venture and commercialization understand the idea. We do a preliminary patentability analysis and an initial commercial potential analysis, just an initial one. If it makes the cut, it moves into the four-cylinder part of the engine, where we bring in lots of outside eyes, technical experts from the university and the community, business and finance people, entrepreneurs, to vet the technology. And in the four-cylinder thing, we're trying to test assumptions that with any technology, there are assumptions made about what it will be good for, what the market will be, what technical performance the technology will have, and so forth. We try to do additional research, market research and lab research, to test those assumptions. We try to get lots of eyes on it and try to determine if there's enough merit to actually patent this thing and move it forward to licensing. So most of the action is in this 4-cylinder section of this engine. And the ones that come out of there are ready to be licensed. And then we go to what we call our VA part of the engine, which is where we try to support our licensed technologies as they move into existing companies or into startup companies. We do a lot of new startup companies at the University of Utah. We have a lot of experience working with companies, and as those of you who started up a company, I was a faculty entrepreneur. I've been through it myself. A lot of risks, a lot of challenges in startup companies, and the universities retain some ownership, some equity ownership in the startups, and we actually have funds to provide to the companies to continue their research and development to protect our equity interest. So let's look at an example. In this early phase, we get a block of marble that we think there's a Michelangelo statue in there of technology. We determine what that statue could look like, if we can protect the statue, and if the market is sufficient for a statue of David, that we can pass it along for further investment, either in patenting and in further research. In the case of the Clark Capital technology, some professors found this antimicrobial compound that's cheap to make and that seems to be much safer than the antibacterial, antifouling compounds that are currently in use in the oil and gas industry and in lubrication applications. So that was disclosed, and because of this engine process, Clark Capital folks were at the table, got to understand the technology as we were getting to understand it, and some local companies with interests in antimicrobial technology were also there to see this disclosure come in and help us think about what it could become. So the milestones were, we set up milestones, as I mentioned, in these early stages. The milestones were met, and then then we moved to the 4-cylinder stage of this process. Clark Capital got intimate details about the technology as it was being studied in our Tech Venture Commercialization Group. A local company called Curza, a small company interested in antimicrobials, asked us if they could license this. They put additional money back into the discovery process. We did a license agreement with them, and then using our money, Clark Capital's money, and who became investors in this outside company, Curza, and Curza's money, we did sponsored research agreements back to the professor to test assumptions about the technology and further move it along towards commercialization. So we have, sorry. Well, it's complicated enough. We'll just let that one go. So the process is really having all the stakeholders that might be interested in technology at the table while we evaluate it, so we can take full advantage of their knowledge and interest. We all put money in, we all invest in these technologies that look good and advance them together. That's a little bacteria that's supposed to be a bacteria that this chemical kills. So Clark Capital is so excited about their experience with this engine thing that they regularly participate now. They brought a lot of the other investment firms in Utah that they normally do deals with into this process, and we're getting a much larger, better educated pool of business people in Utah that are interested in our technologies and are trying to help us license them. We think this will be a much more efficient way to evaluate technology. We'll have many fewer technologies. I think we'll have a higher proportion of licenses. And we do have some data already on this. idea is that we had external input from scientific experts, business, finance people. We have our staff in the Technology and Venture Commercialization Group with funds, our funds that we can invest in these technologies to help vet them. We have outside investors. And then, as I mentioned, we and outside interests, companies and investors put money into this process to get the technology as de-risked as possible before we try to take it into the marketplace. So we were spending about $1 million a year internally supporting further research and development on technologies that were coming out of our labs. And it was pretty clear to me when I took over responsibility for tech commercialization that a lot of that money was really not being used very efficiently. So under the old program, we would give $35,000 grants to faculty members, and during the 10 years from 2001 to 2011, we funded 146 of these projects in the university. And of those technologies only that we supported with money, 21 or 14% of them wound up with licensed technologies. 89 of them we submitted patent applications, and only 9 patents were awarded. We consider that a fairly low yield. With just about 18 months of this new process under the engine, we've given money to 30 technologies, but in a milestone-based way. So the companies can come back every 8 weeks to our committees and ask for money based on whether they achieve the milestone from a previous money. So they can move as fast as they can, but only in a pretty rigorously controlled milestone-based funding pattern. Whereas the old system was once or twice a year we'd give them a grant and hope something happened. Now there's no limit on how much money they can have, but they have to come show us that they actually accomplished something. This is working much better. I'm sorry. You can see that of the 30 awards we made in the last 18 months, 43% of them have wound up being licensed. Patent applications have been filed on 80% of them, and already in that short period of time, we've had 13% of the patents that we applied for have been awarded. We think this is going to be, and we're spending much less money. As opposed to about $1 million that we were spending under the old system, I think we've dispersed less than $500,000 under this new system, and I think we're getting better results. So I think that is it. A lot more. I brought some handouts on our student innovation programs, on this program here, and some other things that we're doing in tech commercialization. Any of you that are interested in more details, you can look at our website there. Thanks very much for the opportunity to talk.